Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here today because, well, we're looking at something that literally affects every single one of us, usually without us even noticing. We're going to uncover the invisible forces that actually drive our purchasing decisions. You know, we all like to think we're completely rational shoppers, right? Just making logical choices based on the numbers in front of us. But the research paints a totally different and honestly absolutely fascinating picture. Today, we're unpacking a couple of incredible academic studies that reveal exactly how our brains process prices, form habits, and get totally sucked into digital ecosystems. So think about it for a second. Is a 10% discount always a good thing? Your immediate reaction is probably, yeah, great, I'm saving money. But is it actually always a good thing in the eyes of the consumer? I want to pose this question directly to you right now, to kind of challenge your assumptions about how you perceive value. Because as we'll see, the context of that discount, where you find it, and what exactly you're buying, it can completely change whether you feel like you just scored a bargain or if you're getting cheated. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The fairness illusion. 2. The frequency factor. 3. The gamification effect. And 4. Changing buyer behavior. Let's get to it. Section 1. The fairness illusion. Are prices really fair? To answer that, we basically have to debunk a massive myth right off the bat. The whole idea that consumers just logically hunt for the lowest price. It turns out we actually judge something called price fairness. Academically, this is defined as a subjective assessment of whether a price difference across channels, say buying something online versus in a physical brick-and-mortar store, is acceptable, justifiable, and reasonable. Now, the absolutely crucial word there is subjective. Fairness isn't math. It's an emotional feeling. And what's really interesting is just how easily that feeling gets manipulated by a bunch of invisible factors. For example, look at how age completely flips this feeling of fairness. You'd probably assume that young, tech-savvy digital natives would totally understand and be fine with dynamic online pricing. Nope, not at all. When looking at cross-channel price differences, the 18 to 24-year-old group actually assessed those differences as the least fair. Meanwhile, the 55-plus demographic found them to be the most fair. There's a massive dissonance here. It really shows that our baseline expectations depend heavily on the era we grew up shopping in. Moving on to Section 2, the frequency factor, habits and prices. This is where we start looking at how the mere habit of buying completely warps our perception of a good deal. Just think about your own habits for a second. On one hand, you've got high-frequency purchases, stuff like food, beverages, and daily cosmetics. On the other, you have low-frequency purchases, like a cool new toy or hobby and leisure equipment. I want you to think about your last toy or hobby purchase versus, say, your weekly grocery run. You have this deeply ingrained sense of the baseline price for your groceries because you see those numbers every single week. But for that rare hobby item, your price anchor is way looser. And the academic data shows that this purchase frequency fundamentally changes how we judge the exact same pricing strategies. So what actually happens when retailers start discounting across these different channels? Well, if a store has a low online discount of, say, 10%, it doesn't really bother us. We just naturally assume, oh, that just covers the online shipping costs. We rationalize it perfectly. But as that discount deepens to a massive 40% difference between the online and offline channels, our perceived fairness just drops off a cliff. Suddenly, we start to feel like the physical, offline store is actively price gouging us. This right here is the frequency discount trap, and it perfectly explains why identical prices absolutely do not guarantee perceived fairness. The data proves that an identical 40% online discount feels way less fair when it's applied to your daily coffee than it does when applied to a rare model train. Identical math simply does not mean identical feelings. If you're a retailer looking at this data, you have to be incredibly careful when discounting high-frequency everyday items. Why? Because your buyers demand strict price consistency. Our familiarity with the product breeds this absolute demand for fairness across every single channel. Section 3. The gamification effect. Engineering app value. So we've talked about how our brains judge price and cost. Now let's flip it and look at the benefits side. For decades, academics have used something called the Technology Acceptance Model, or TAM, to map out why we actually use digital tools. Traditionally, it boils down to two very logical things: perceived usefulness, as in, does this help me? And perceived ease of use, is this frustrating to use? If an app passes those two tests, it leads to a positive attitude, which leads to behavioral intention, and finally, actual use. It's a highly logical, purely utilitarian way of looking at things. But here's the catch. pure logic just wasn't enough to explain the absolute explosion of modern fintech apps, specifically those buy now, pay later apps that are so popular with younger consumers. So, researchers had to create an extended TAM model. They added two massive external variables into the mix: gamification and perceived value. By injecting game-like elements into financial apps, developers completely rewired this traditional model. They shifted the whole experience from something purely functional to something deeply, deeply psychological. Let's break that somewhat dense academic model down into 3 simple steps of psychological manipulation. Step 1. The app adds gamification. Think progress bars, digital confetti, unlockable badges for buying things. Step 2. This artificially skyrockets your perceived value. Suddenly, you aren't taking on a loan, you're winning a game and earning rewards. And Step 3. This totally bypasses your logical cost-benefit analysis and directly triggers the intention to buy, even if it literally means taking on short-term debt. The researchers put it perfectly. To quote the study directly here, gamification increases user motivation and brand attachment, rewarding an action or interaction in various forms. Things like leaderboards, point systems, and unlockable rewards, they create this frictionless, highly engaging financial ecosystem. You are no longer just a consumer evaluating a payment plan. You're a player engaged in a rewarding digital environment. And this manufactured perceived value makes the sting of parting with your money feel entirely different. Which brings us to Section 4, changing buyer behavior, tech driving intentions. So whether it's a multi-channel pricing algorithm quietly adjusting a discount behind the scenes, or a gamified interface openly awarding you points, these invisible levers have a very real-world financial outcome. Just look at this number, 6.42%. According to the data, buy now, pay later users spend 6.42% more than non-users. That is a massive margin in the retail world. When you successfully manipulate perceived value through gamification and you align it with the ease of deferred payment, consumer spending increases tangibly. The psychology literally translates directly into profit. Let's synthesize exactly what we should take away from all this data today. First, age shifts fairness perception. Surprisingly, younger consumers are actually more critical of cross-channel price differences. Second, purchase frequency completely warps discount value. A deep discount on your daily groceries feels far less fair than the same discount on a rare toy. Third, gamification manufactures perceived value out of thin air, using badges and points. And fourth, modern tech interfaces take all these elements to ultimately drive our final intentions to buy. I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on today. Think back to your very last digital purchase, maybe using a digital wallet or a buy now, pay later app. Were you truly buying that product for its objective price, evaluating the cross-channel fairness logically? Or were you just playing the app's game? It is a fascinating question and one definitely worth asking yourself the next time you hit checkout. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you next time.